Ladies and gentlemen, the World Online Racing Console Tier 2 team head to the Las Vegas for the 4th round of the of Season 19. And tonight, myself, Copcast, will be hosting this party. Well, we could call it a watch party if you like. And alongside me is nobody. That's right, I'm here by myself. So, yeah, we'll muddle our way through it. And Typical has already retired from the session. I believe he's got a quali ban. I don't know because I cannot see the Discord. But we are going to watch. Well, we're gonna jump straight in because why the hell not? It's Las Vegas, gambler's paradise, and some of these drivers will be looking to gamble straight away. Max van der Geest is going to be the first one, the TF10 driver, coming around the final corner in his RB to start his lap. And so we will see what these Tier 2 drivers are made of. Last time out, we bore witness to the Tiers 3, 4, 5, and 6. All the VODs are on YouTube if you want to go and watch them. We bore witness to all of them traversing the track. The highest, well, the lowest pole time. The quickest is what I meant to say. The lowest pole time was 1:29.9. That was set by ETE Nico in Tier 4. These drivers will be looking to go quicker than that. They're in Tier 2. They should go quicker than that, really. They've had another day to practice. They've had another day to watch onboards. Watch, you know, they've watched the action from last night. Or they should have been watching the action from last night. And so they'll know a little bit more. And Max van der Geest, he will know less than everybody else because he's the first one out on track. So he won't know what laps other people are setting, but he'll know whether this is a good lap. Around Vegas, you can sort of feel, you can put a feeler out as to whether it's a good lap or not. And it's all based around the exits out of the corners you get, especially that one there, which leads onto the Las Vegas Strip, that one of the longest straights on the calendar, and certainly one of the most dominating straights in terms of the effect that it has on a circuit. The RB now round the final braking zone, which isn't anywhere near the final corner, as he comes out now onto another back straight. This is the third one that he's gone onto, and he's going to duck into the pits. So the TF10 driver not setting a time so far. The Haas behind also coming into the pits here. Tree, who invalidated. Manlike is invalidated. Alpha Kevin, he's on a push lap. I believe that is Nick ahead on a push lap. We'll see what the McLaren is made of. He's going to come into the pits. There we go. Alpha Kevin's going to be the first across the line. It's going to be a 1:30.667. He won't be the only one, though, to set a time as TF10 Kevin's goes up into the lead. 1:30.3 with Dan slotting his way into second with a 1:30.4. McTimmy all the way down, almost 1:30.8. But Lawrence, we're watching on board with, he picks up a 1:30.1. And so he will take provisional pole position. Minotaur around the final corner. Can he beat it out? Not quite. He's a 10th off with a 1:30.2. Nam comes into the pits. And Niall Gio, he's going to come around the final corner using all of his ERS that he possibly can do. What sort of time is the McLaren going to set? It's going to be a 1:30.393. That is 5th place for Niall Gio, who joined me actually last night in the comms box for the Tier 4 race. So he's been in the lobby. He's been so close up to all of the action. He'll have been analysing the data. He'll have been having a look. And so, so we should be seeing a solid performance from him, especially considering the fact that Niall is currently on a podium streak. He got 3rd last time out in Singapore. He got 3rd the week before in COTA, the other American circuit on this calendar. And he finds himself in 4th place in the championship. 1st place is the man that we watched on board with right at the start, Max van der Geest, who's going to go for another lap here. He's not picked up a victory just yet. But, I mean, P2, P2, and P2. That's not a bad performance at all. So it will be very, very interesting to have a look and see what Max van der Geest is capable of, because the consistency that we've seen so far from him, well, that's been the tale of this season so far. We're only 3 rounds in. We're only a third in. And after today, we will almost be halfway through because we've got 10 rounds in this season. After here, then we head to Great Britain, then the Netherlands, Hungary, and Austria, and then Portugal, and then Brazil to round off the season. And we've had a pretty decent start to this season with 4-5 drivers establishing themselves as contenders, with Van der Geest leading the championship on 54 points, Manlike 8 points behind on 46, Harvey 5 points behind that on 41, and then Niall Gio 3 points behind Harvey, and TTM Nick, Gio's teammate, just 1 point behind him. Simbarox as well, he's been up there 4th and 5th, then a 9th in between sees him 30 points behind Max Van der Geest at the top, and it's Van der Geest that we're going to watch on board with now as he heads through the second sector. It's allegedly a purple first sector, but as we know, the game likes to lie about these sorts of things. But hey, maybe they've updated it. Maybe they've updated it. We'll see. Because they've certainly updated the smoke. It's certainly a lot whiter. Whether it's any less dense is that's another question. But Max Van der Geest now, he's only got 2 more braking zones to go, but he's got a hell of a lot of ERS to burn. And he's going to come across the second sector split time with a 54.3. We'll see how that stacks up against the rest of the field as he heads now down the big straight as Chris RBL retires from the session. The Ferrari, the second driver to retire, and it looks like it's an on-track retirement. So not what he would have wanted as he retired, just on the verge of leaving Sector 1. I'll get up what corner that actually is in a second, but at the moment we'll watch Max Van der Geest as he heads around now the final corner. Just a little kink as he comes across the line with the fastest lap by 4 tenths. 129.770. He's thrown a gauntlet down, and Manlike unable to match it, but getting pretty close or closer than everybody else. But TTM Nick getting even closer than everyone else, getting so close to Max Van der Geest. Too close for comfort, you may even say, as it's 5 thousandths down on that time. OVR Adis he's coming around the final corner now. What sort of time is he going to have on offer? As Alpha Kevin, the first man to set a time, comes across the line, set his second one. Adis across the line with a 130.481. But yeah, a retirement from Chris RBL in turn 5, which is, I mean, it's a very, very tight corner, that's for sure. But beyond that, not 100% sure what's happened there. Nam with a 54.3 through the second sector. And, well, he'll be desperate to get up. He's the only driver that's going to set a time that hasn't already. And, well, we'll see what the Haas has to offer. What the Haas has to offer as he comes round now. This section is very easy to invalidate. Nam has avoided that. And now he can just keep the power down, hold it, open up the ERS around the final corner. Indeed, he's going to. And Nam, pole position, not quite. 130.175. That slots him in 5th place. So a decent start for a number of drivers. Simbarox, though, invalidating. That is not ideal from the Aston Martin. And he will stay in that 8th place. Just having a look now. Alpha Kevin was 6 tenths up on his time. He's not anymore because he's invalidated his lap. But yeah, that's another lap. That's another driver to look out for on in this session. With well, you've got a number of drivers to look out for. TF10 Kevins is one of them. He's improving by 4 tenths. He could become the 3rd driver into the 129s. We'll see as the kick Sauber comes around the final corner. Power down. ERS on. And just throwing the car through to a 129.883. The top 3, well, they're incredibly close together at the moment. We'll watch McTimmy, shall we? As he is in what would be the slipstream of the Red Bull if it wasn't for the ghosting. And he comes into the pits. So Niall Gio, once again, the only driver on a push lap. I think he's on a push lap anyway. He must be, as he's going to come up to the line with no ERS once again. What sort of time is the McLaren going to be able to put on the board? It's going to be a 130.275. 8th place for Niall Gio. Something interesting to note, by the way, is that, well, this is Kevin's first race this season. The only full-time driver to not have raced so far this season. So it's certainly going to be an interesting watch as to where he comes out. And he, well, this is all going to be a great watch. A spectacle was put on by the lower console tiers last night. And, well, this is the only spectacle currently on the WOR channel, until at least we see a significant drop in viewers, because tier 1 starts at 8 o'clock. But until then, we've got 45 more minutes of tier 2 action, and it should be a lot more raw racing, as I've just earned some rewards points. That's exciting. Sorry about that. Don't know why that came up at the bottom of my screen, but anyway, I don't know what rewards points are, because I only really boot my Xbox up now for these WOR races. And Minotaur is going to come across the line. Back on topic, Minotaur is going to come across the line. 129.994, the third driver into the 29s, but only just. FRT Dan, the latest driver to start his lap. Quite a few of them are going for one more push lap before, well, they prepare and they go again. With, yeah, everybody apart from Gio and Kevin, who are sort of out of sync, out on the track, setting a lap. And we'll have to see. We will see. We will see how these drivers get on. Will we see any more 129s? We've already beaten yesterday's pole time. 3 of the drivers have actually beaten. So, well, it's very, very interesting. It's very interesting to see the class difference between tier 3 and tier 4. 3/10, in fact, between Van der Geest and Nick, the top of tier 2 and the top of the tier 3 field, with tier 4 actually having the best lap of all the sessions last night. Dan, though, he is currently sitting with a 130.4. That wouldn't have been good enough in tier 3 or 4 last night. Don't know about tier 5 or 6, but it wouldn't have been good enough for tier 3 or 4. And the RB has one more corner to go. Can he improve on that lap around the final corner? It's a pretty good one. It's going to be a 130.106, just 200 thousandths off of Manlike. It's even better than I was mentioning. But, yeah, quality laps coming in from pretty much the whole field. Max van der Geest, he's going to improve his lead. And he's going to slip into the 129.6s with 129.668. Manlike and Nick diving into the pits. Dan is improving. No, Dan has improved by a huge margin. Lawrence, he's improving. Who else is on a lap? Adis, we haven't seen much of him tonight. And we haven't seen, actually, whether he's improving on his lap. And he doesn't... Well, he isn't, is the synopsis of that. Simbarox comes into the pits. Lawrence is the next driver on a lap. The Williams coming down the strip, and we'll see what sort of lap that he is able to put in. Throwing the car maybe a little bit too aggressively into the chicane and coming out of it. Well, he's come out of it pretty okay. The exit was pretty nice, and using all of his ERS, he's going to come into the pits and not set another lap. Nam, he's on a lap. Can somebody set a lap? Nope. Dan is on an in-lap. Van der Geest is on an in-lap. Kevin and Niall Gio are on out-laps. Niall has been my saviour tonight so far. Thought it was going to be my saviour by joining me in the comms box. Never mind. But, alas, the McLaren is racing. And fair enough. I mean, he's 4th place in the championship. If he was, you know, P18, he's not picked up a single point yet, I would understand it. But you know, he's got a little bit more to fight for, so it's understandable, and he'll want to pick up that title, which is still so open. It's so open for so many of these drivers. You know, I mean, it's an early point in the season, so it's obviously going to be open. But Van der Geest only 8 points ahead of Manlike. Manlike only 5 points ahead of Harvey. Gio and Nick in the mixer as well. Simbarox has the pace to be within the mixer. So does Typical and Kevin, if Typical can stop crashing, with 2 DNFs out of the last 2 races. The only points finished, or the only finish at all that he's picked up is in China, where he finished 5th and so received 10 points. Alpha Kevin, same one, but he didn't race in China. He raced in at Kota. Van der Geest retires from the session. He is done, and he thinks he's done enough to take that pole position. 1 minute 53 left on the clock. Everybody's out apart from Adis and Dan, who are going to have to be snappy, and Niall Gio will start his final lap around the Las Vegas circuit. And we'll watch on board then as he heads through turn number 1, Harbour Island Apartments, and then it's another sweeping corner. This one, though, you've got to keep up the minimum speed rather than braking heavily on your way in and then picking up the pace. Then it's the first DRS straight off the lap, a pretty snappy one, which is only really good for keeping distances low rather than making those overtakes. It's not quite long enough for that. Then a windy, twisty section, 7, 8, and 9 as Niall Gio comes out of it. You've got to clip the curb. Indeed, he does there, and the power is down on the exit. Maybe the first burst of ERS that you'll see on this lap, but only a tiny little bit because you want to save it all for the last 2 straights. Who was that? That was Alpha Kevin jumping up to be the, to join the 130.1s club. Niall Gio, he's improving too quick to be in that. He is on track to get a 129, and he's got all that ERS to burn down the back straight and then down the other back straight, which leads onto the final corner and onto, well, the final run. We will see as Kotkas is going to need to send an invite to Max van der Geest. I didn't mean to I didn't mean to read my name out loud. I meant to read out Max van der Geest, who's asking for an invite. But instead I read out my name, and now you know how to pronounce it. Anyway, Niall Gio around the final corner. 129.899. That slots him into P4. I'm not sure that's going to be good enough, as Manlike is going to be up to the line. Dan is not going to set another time. Everybody else is on at least a push lap, with Gio and Kevin the only ones that are not. Manlike has 1 more corner to go. What can the Mercedes pull out of the bag as the checkered flag is waved? He's 2 thousandths ahead of Dan at the moment. Make that, well, 3 tenths ahead as he finds himself on that podium. And that is where he's going to want to stay as Simba Rocks. He's improving, but he's invalidated. And Alpha Kevin's on his in-lap. Who's the next one? It's Kevin's, who's not improving on his lap at this current point. But with the pace that he's had in this lap, as Simba Rocks has retired from the session, he will be starting from a peak of P11. Kevin's around the final corner. A little bit of a tap on the wall. And we'll see what he can do around the final corner. Has he backed out of that? No, he's not. But he's not used enough ERS. And he's certainly not put on his best show, his best display there. Nam is going to come around the final couple of corners as Nick improves, but not quite enough to take that pole position away from Max van der Geest. Nam around the final corner. What can the Haas do from 10th place? Come into the pits. Possibly illegally. But that's not my place to say. Minotaur across the line. And he jumps Niall Gio into 5th place. Adis. Something. I'm gonna use Adis, I think is how I'm gonna pronounce it. He is 2 tenths up on his lap. Can he improve by any more? No, he's improved by 2 tenths, and he is in P11. That is going to be your Tier 2 grid for tonight's Las Vegas Grand Prix. Max van der Geest taking pole position ahead of Nick in 2nd. Manlike in 3rd. And Kevin's taking that 4th spot. Minotaur in 5th, and Niall Gio rounding out the top 6 and the only drivers in the 129s. Then it's Dan, Lawrence, Alpha Kevin, and Nam. And then I guess you could include Adiz in that group as well before you get to the drivers behind who didn't set really competitive laps, those being Simba Rocks, McTimmy, and TTM Tree. And then Typical and Chris RBL didn't set a time. But now, let's go and have a word from a couple of our sponsors, and then the main trailer for Season 19. If you want to join the Discord, I believe the link is in the description. And come join us on the grid. You'll get your name read out by my beautiful tones. race day is here in console tier 2, and we're just a couple of moments away from the green flag. We're about 3 minutes away from the green flag. Get your predictions in the chat. Who is going to take this victory? For me, it's got to be Max. 3 second places in a row. It just needs to be topped off by that victory. And I mean, we'll have to see if he gets that strategy right. There's so many factors that go into a strategy. For example, the likes of, you could get a safety car thrown out. At this high level, it's unlikely that you'll get a safety car thrown out, but you never ever know. And then you got things like, you know, undercuts. Undercuts are incredibly strong on this game, but then if you can't break through the field, then suddenly you're stuck later on in the race with hards on, while everybody else has those has the tyre advantage, has those mediums. And so there's lots of things to be weighed up by the drivers, that go, all of which will go into the strategy. They have to be incredibly careful in order to manage it. It looks like the top drivers are going onto those hards, with the bottom ones going for those mediums. The mediums is a gamble, mainly because of the DRS advantage that you are able to get. Because even if you break 9/10 until the straight, suddenly that's all evaporated in the space of one lap of, well, one DRS zone essentially. But yeah, it is now 7:53. The time will tick over to 7:54, and we will get going here under the lights in Las Vegas. Did we get any race predictions in the chat? No, we didn't, but we did get a spike in viewers. Everybody join as we head to the 5 red lights for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Round 4 of the console tier 2 season, and one that could be huge in terms of the championship. We could see Max pull away an even bigger gap at the top than the 8.1 he already has. We could see Manlike fight back though, as last time out's tier 4 champion. Well, he's looking to prove himself at what is almost the highest level. All will be unveiled very, very soon. Having said that, Manlike's further down the field, so it's unlikely that Max on pole, if he can avoid the connection issues that he had in qualifying, he'll be a very, very strong contender. But we're going to go to the 5 red lights for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. It's lights and it's action. They're setting away straight away here in Las Vegas. For Max van der Geest gets a great start. Nick and Manlike side by side into turn number 1. Manlike trying to cling to the outside line. Nick holding the inside. They've swapped round now. They've swapped roles as Nick heads through, and he is up into P3. Lawrence and Alpha Kevin side by side as they're heading now down the main straight, or the back straight, and you've got Minotaur making a move on Dan. Dan, there's contact between the 3. Dan losing out. Minotaur losing out as well. And the third driver in that battle, I think it was Lawrence, actually getting away with it, maybe getting some damage, but not dropping down the field as the other ones did. Simbarox makes it past Timmy into P10. But that is why you don't go 3 wide into turn 5. Huge error. Nobody's fault. Or, well, we'll see in the steward's room after the race. But from our perspective, it looked like it was nobody's fault. It's just Dan chance one down the inside, and it went incredibly wrong. And now he and Minotaur are going to have to fight from the back. Minotaur 3 seconds off, so I think he was the one who sustained the most damage from that battle. We'll see the Red Bull's front wing, and yeah, there's absolutely, well, there's almost nothing there. You can see half of it has been pretty much wiped out. But at the end of this first lap, or not even near the end of the first lap yet, but almost at the end of the first lap, Max van der Geest is going to lead. Nick follows through in second place. Manlike was close to Nick, but Nick with that straight line speed, he's looking to attack Max a little bit more than Manlike is looking to attack Nick. Attack is the best form of defense after all, and Nick will be closing in on the RB. We're going to have a look at the tyres just to see, as Max obviously picks up the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and you can see the possible race strategies, medium to hard. As who was that? That was Kevin's going very, very wide in an attempt to attack Manlike. He's now fallen back and could fall into the clutches of the McLaren of Niall Gio. who's going to want to help his teammate further up, but it's not quite yet. The gaps are all stabilizing at around 2, 3, 4 tenths. And DRS will help change that. It will shake the order up, an order that has only just been established. But give it another couple of corners and anything could happen. We've just had our first DRS straight, but as I mentioned right at the top, it's one that's good for closing that gap, making that move, maybe not. Because all the moves will be made on the exit of turn number 12 of Fashion Show Mall is the name of that corner, or the name of the complex around the corner. That's pretty much what they've named these corners after. But Nick, 6 tenths behind Max van der Geest. He's set up more for the corners. Nick is set up more for the straights. And you can see that he's set up more for the straights. We're going to watch on board as he closes in. This is ridiculous stuff. And he's not even got DRS yet. He's just flicked it open. And the McLaren could be looking for a move for the lead of this race. The TTM driver early on could be pulling to the inside line of Max van der Geest. Not to be. There is a move, though, being made in the background. That is going to be Alpha Kevin trying to make a move on Lawrence, being unsuccessful. But the exit is in the favour of the Mercedes, who's just not got that momentum to make the move. Nick with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix as he bears down on Max van der Geest. Tree, actually, in P10, the leader of the medium runners with that fastest lap. Only he and McTimmy are on those mediums. So, I mean, it's a gamble from the Haas and from the Alpine. One that's unlikely to pay off. But, hey, you never, ever know. As you've got Tree in the meantime making his way past Simbarox into P number 9. Everybody from first down to 13th of these 16 drivers is within DRS. The only exception being Chris RBL, Dan, who came into the pits, and Minotaur, who also came into the pit. So, I mean, the field is incredibly tight. We knew that they were going to be incredibly tight. And, well, it's just that back straight is going to help them on their journey of being incredibly tight together. If there's an early safety car, the mediums would benefit, but that's about it. I would agree with that. I think with the amount of chaos that is possible around Vegas, that is what they would have gambled on. It's unlikely to pay off. But if there is a safety car, then it will benefit all of the medium runners. Tree, McTimmy, Dan, and Minotaur as well, because Dan and Minotaur are 24 seconds off. To be frank about it. Alpha Kevin, he's still looking at the back of Lawrence, but Lawrence closing in on Niall Gio with that DRS. Niall clearly setting up more for the corners than the straights, and so he's really suffering in that main overtaking spot as Tree makes his way past the Diz, and the mediums fire up as there's another move being made. That's Simbarox on the inside of a Diz. He's looking to pile on the misery for the Alpine, but it's going to be, well, a Diz re-overtakes, and P9 is once again his Simbarox, though with a better exit. But it is with that DRS just able to ward him off for the time being. Simbarox looking to the inside line, backing out of the move. He's not going to go for it for the time being, but he's looking racy early on in this race. I mean, it's the definition, so why not? Nick, he's 5 tenths behind Max van der Geest. He's going to close in. That ERS tank is completely full. So is it for Max van der Geest, to be fair. What's it like? They're all stabilizing. They're all getting used to this race. They're all settling down in their respective positions. And so, well, although we may see moves now, the moves will peak later on in this race. But at the moment, Max van der Geest leads the race. Nick, he's closer than he ever was as they head into the DRS zone. His straight line speed is so much better than the RB's. And he's making me take the words straight out of my mouth. The McLaren takes the lead of this race. Manlike looking to get involved as well as Max van der Geest drops to P3. The Mercedes slots in P2 and Nick takes the lead of this race. And, well, next lap, I can't wait for it all to swap back round again. But I think Nick with the lead now, I think he's likely to stay there, you know, just because of the fact that he has the straight line speed that nobody else does. I think that's where the advantage is going to come, because the overtakes are going to be made in the straights, as typical proves me wrong, making his way past Nam. But that was set up in the straight, almost certainly. And yeah, the straights are absolutely crucial to nail. And Nick today has nailed the setup for the straights. So far, he's nailed this race. And it's just about whether he can manage it. He will see Manlike right on his rear through the first couple of sectors. But then it's sector 3 where he can absolutely blast away. Well, I say that. he's still got the DRS to Manlike. It's a very interesting clash of strategies with Nick being, well, set up for the straights as he is. I feel like he's going to nullify that effect that the DRS has, but then the ERS comes into play for Manlike, and I'm sure Nick's going to want to save some of that for the fighting if he is overtaken. It's a strategy call that will come to light very, very soon, as Manlike is right on the rear of Nick. 2 tenths behind, becomes 1 tenth before even the DRS zone, and Manlike is going to take the lead of the race. Nick's straight line speed advantage isn't what I thought it was, and Max van der Geest, he's pulling to the inside line now of Manlike. Nope, he's just ducking out. But I think if Nick is able to build up that momentum on that straight, maybe make that overtake on the exit of turn number 12, I think he will be in an incredible position to build that gap. And I think that will be where the McLaren wins this race, or loses this race, because it's nowhere near done. Lap 6 of 25, and Tree looking for the undercut. I say the undercut, the switchback even on Alpha Kevin. He's also looking for the undercut with those medium tyres on, but he won't be looking for it on Alpha Kevin. He'll be wanting to move forward, looking to the outside line of Alpha Kevin, but the Mercedes has it covered. And looking further up, because they're all just waiting. They're waiting for a mistake. Mistakes are made in this division. You've just got to wait for your opportunity. And Max van der Geest at the moment, he's certainly biding his time behind Manlike. DRS will be available for him once again. As I think it's interesting to note the different strategies. I think Nick on those on the straight line speed, he is the king, and we know the straights are important. How important though are the straights? That will come to light over the next 19 laps, but at the moment Manlike is going to lose this lead to Max van der Geest down the straight. Nick is going to look to get involved. We're going to watch on board with the McLaren as he closes in. He's not close enough. That gap was just too big in front of him, between himself and Manlike, and so he's not been able to make that move. Coming around the final corner now. He's 2-3 tenths behind Manlike. Stabilising in that P3 slot. But he is saving. So you never ever know. Because, well, I mean, the top two are, I'd presume, saving as well. It would make full sense for them to be. And it wouldn't make much sense as to why they wouldn't be. But, regardless. Max van der Geest continues to lead this race. Manlike in P2 and Nick in P3. Those are the top three at the moment, with Kevin's and Niall Gio waiting in the wings. Lawrence doesn't seem to quite have the speed, especially not if he does that with a big kick of oversteer out of turn number 5. That will not help his case. And the Williams in P6. He just hasn't had the pace so far this race to keep up. Knowing my luck generally across not just this race, but across this season, and across all the commentary I do so far, Lawrence is going to end up winning the race. But, I mean, it would be exciting. It would certainly be an exciting one. The gaps, they extend to about 5 tenths, and then they slow down, or they get down to about 2 tenths on this straight. And if it's not 2 tenths, that's because they've made the overtake, as Manlike is looking to do. But he pulled out of the slipstream too early on Max van der Geest. He was unable to make any sort of a move, any sort of pressure. He was unable to apply to the RB ahead. And so, again, he's tucking in. He's waiting there. Nick is tucking in and waiting there. Kevin's and Niall tucking in and waiting there. Lawrence, from what I've said, would be happy to be there. I know he's quality enough to be up there. I mean, you've got to be if you're on this grid. As Chris RBL makes the move past Timmy, who comes into the pits to the first of the 2 medium runners to dive into the pit lane. And the Alpine will be getting rid of those mediums, putting on a set of hard compound tyres. That will take him to the end of the race. I'm sure we'll see Tree in over the next couple of laps, although it does seem as though those mediums, although they're not cracking, are stable. He's matching the pace of those hard runners. And that's why the gamble onto the mediums is such a gamble when you've got everybody else on the grid on those hards, because that DRS, you don't need good tyres to stay within the DRS range of somebody down a straight. Obviously, yeah, you do through the corners, But now that those mediums have worn a little bit more and you can see him a little bit tetchy on exit, you don't need good tyres to close in the DRS straight, and that is what he is banking on at the moment. Simbarox, though, gets a better exit than Adis, but not quite good enough to make that move. The DRS, though, beckons for both the drivers, and he could be making that move. Nam makes his way past Typical in the background, and, well, it's a move well made for Simbarox. He moves up into P number 9, and the Aston Martin is now chasing down Tree, although he's almost out of the DRS. Again, still the top 12 in the DRS. The only driver to have gotten out of it since I last mentioned it was McTimmy, who came into the pits. He's now 19 seconds behind us. There's a battle for the last place. The wooden spoon is currently being held by FRT Dan. But man like Nick, Kevins, and Niall, as Kevins almost goes into the back of Nick. He braked so late there. Sorry about that. He braked so late there, the Kick Sauber, which is it's a surprise to see how late he braked, actually, because I thought he was going to go into the back of him. It took me a couple of seconds to process, but in the end, he was absolutely fine, and he didn't go into the back of the McLaren, which is a good sight to see. Obviously, we don't want to see a crash unless we don't want to see a crash unless it's Niall. We don't want to see a crash at all. And well, lap 9 in this race, we have every single one of our drivers in the race, but Dan and Minotaur, with an incident earlier on. They were the ones who crashed. Well, it was 3 wide. It was them, and I think it was Lawrence. I never actually got confirmation on that, as Niall Gio pulls out to the inside line. Simbarox and Adis make their way past Tree, who's surely going to come into the pits on the end of this lap, and there's contact between Niall Gio and Kevins. We saw Kevins almost go into the back of Nick earlier on in this lap, and Niall gets payback for his teammates. He's, well, he's gone into the back of Kevins. A slight lapse of concentration on lap 10 of this Grand Prix now. And Gio may have suffered front wing damage. Alpha Kevin making his way past Lawrence, who drops to P7. We do have a prediction in the chat for Lawrence to win. I find that unlikely, but I have been downing his performance so far this race. So, hey, you never know. The Tree comes into the pits. Yeah, he does get rid of those mediums for a set of hard compounded tyres. We'll see where he comes out in relation to McTimmy. So obviously, they are coming in because it matters what tyre they are on. And well, Jesus. What has happened? What has happened to McTimmy? Because he's now 9 seconds off the Tree, and he only came in a couple of laps earlier. And they were around the same area on the track, I think. They weren't 9 seconds off each other, at least. So maybe the overcut, for once, has worked as a strategy. Either that, or McTimmy has had issues. But, yeah, McTimmy picking up a 3-second time penalty for his troubles. And, well, he's certainly having trouble so far this race. Manlike closing down on Max van der Geest. DRS will be open for him, but he might not even need it. Closing in, getting ahead, or alongside and then ahead. I got a bit ahead of myself, and Manlike got a bit ahead of Max van der Geest into the lead of the race. Nick still sitting behind. He will just be waiting. He'll be saving absolutely everything he can. As there's now a 1.6 second gap between Lawrence and Simbarox. So maybe there was an issue for Simbarox or Adis, one of the two. But either way, they're 1.5 seconds down now on the main peloton. The main peloton that could be seeing a switch. Not quite, as Alpha Kevin was closer to Gio. Gio was closer to Kevin, who made a mistake in turn 1. But Gio just doesn't want to go into the back of the Kick Sauber. And that is a full respect, to be fair. Because, well, I wouldn't want to go into the back of him either, because he may already have front wing damage. I will have a look as Adis gets past Simbarox as well. They're working together so well. Try to catch up into the DRS. And no, he's not got any damage. He is an incredibly lucky boy to not have suffered damage, because it was quite a hefty hit. And he's still within shooting range of at least this podium, if not this victory. Because if there's an issue in the pits for Max van der Geest, Manlike, or Nick, well, I say Nick and Gio, you're going to have to plan this very well, because they are teammates, remember, so they will come into the pits at the same time. Well, if they come in on the same lap, they will go into the same pit box, which could spell disaster, as Gio with a bad exit. Alpha Kevin looking to the outside line to the lead of the two. And he has shown pace in this late stint. Max van der Geest and Nick side by side. Second place is being contested here as Van der Geest to the inside. Nick to the impossible outside line as Van der Geest cuts it off very, very aggressively. But he holds him off regardless. And so the McLaren is left to sit behind for pretty much another lap because there's not really any other overtaking zones around this track. The only one really is turn 1. But Nick chooses not to go for that, and then he has a big kick. A rear lockup from the McLaren that's just cost him a significant chunk of time. And that is so unfortunate as Kevin's is dropping down the field. He has had a spin. Don't know if there was contact actually between the two. I don't think there was. But Kevin's has dropped down. He's missing an end plate, so he's had contact with something. And he falls from P4 to P number 11. The Sauber just stepping out. We saw concentration just wane for a little bit for the Sauber and for Niall Gio. But it's the Sauber who blinks first, and 3 seconds worth of penalties. He really needs to settle down here. Alpha Kevin trying to stay within the DRS of Nick because that gap was vacated by Kevin's. So a gap has been built up between Nick and Alpha Kevin, and Alpha Kevin needs to build his way back in there. Gio, though, 8/10 behind Kevin as well. So interesting. Unlikely that they're going to get back into the DRS at this point because of how close man like Van der Geest and Nick are. They're able to take advantage of not just the DRS, but the slipstream of the car ahead as well. A luxury that Alpha Kevin does not have. And Max Van der Geest takes the lead of this race. But yeah, going very, very well for the top 3 at the moment. It's almost the perfect race as Niall Gio looks for a move on Alpha Kevin. He feels as though the Mercedes is not going quick enough for his liking. And so he reckons he can slot through. Not to be, though, maybe next lap. This could actually work out in Niall Gio's favour. As Lawrence looks to the outside line of turn number 1. Gio diving late and deep into the corner. Lawrence going even deeper, and then he's got the inside line for turn number 2 as Kevin makes a mistake. Lawrence heads through on Gio, and he's up into P5. He could be making that move into P4, but Kevin's mistake wasn't that big. Lawrence maybe looking for the move anyway. No, he's not. And these 3, they're starting to form their own peloton. They've started to form their own fight. As Kevin's retires from the session in the pit lane. We're not going to have a safety car because it's in the pit lane, but that is unfortunate. That is also rather weird retirement. But if you don't reckon you're going to finish on the podium, I guess, if that's what matters to you, if it's not just a collection of points, and he hasn't scored any so far, so it's not like he's in a championship battle. But if he's at the end of the season, he loses the title by 1 point, we know why. And it's because of here in Vegas. Minotaur, in the meantime, looking to make his way past Dan, sending it down the inside. He makes that move. Dan looking for the switchback, but not having the traction. He will tuck back in. These two are just having fun. Manlike swaps into the lead of the race. Lawrence gets past Alpha Kevin finally. And Gio is going to be the latest driver to look on the rear of him. He looked on the rear of him a couple of laps ago. He was unable to make that move. He's going to try to... No, he's not. He's going to come into the pits. He's going to dive in early. He's seen that Nick's not come in. This is the time to come into the pits for a few of the drivers if they want an undercut. And we know how strong the undercut is on this game. Gio, Simbarox. Anybody else coming in? We'll be unable to see whether Tree Down come in. But other than that, it's only Simbarox and Niall Gio. As Niall comes out ahead of Simbarox. They're going to come out behind Tree on 4-lap hold hards. They're only just going to come out behind Tree, though. And so they're going to be able, maybe straight away, to pick up that DRS. Yeah, 8/10 between Tree and Niall Gio. So down the back straight, the McLaren is really going to be able to take advantage. He's even got the advantage here because the detection zone is just after turn number 1. So maybe a little stroke of luck, but you need luck to win in racing. And with 11 laps to go in this Grand Prix now, Niall Gio and Simbarox, they pull the trigger and come into the pits. And it's up to the rest of the field now to respond. They're coming through into the third sector as Minotaur picks up 3 seconds worth of penalties. And Max Van der Geest looks to the inside line. He makes his way into the lead of the race. Kevin makes his way past Lawrence. Adis makes his way past Lawrence. Where on earth has he come from? And Typical gets past Nam as well. Where on earth did Adis come from? He wasn't in this fight a couple of laps ago. He's suddenly thrown his way up in there as Typical picks up a 3-second time penalty for picking up a, well, for exceeding track limits at turn number 15. As, yeah, we do see drivers respond. Max van der Geest, Nick, and man, like all of the top 3, all of the top 4. Lawrence comes into the pits as well, and so does Nam. It's the crossover period. And we'll see as Niall Gio and Simbarox, they are going to lead this group. But they're not going to lead the provisional race. That is still going to go to Max van der Geest, who is 3 seconds off Chris RBL. And he's about, well, about 2.5 seconds ahead of Gio and Simbarox. So they may have lost out. It may be that the overcut is the strategy to go for today. Well, a surprising result considering what usually happens on this game. But yeah, we've got an interesting race brewing with 10 laps to go. Alpha Kevin, Adis, Typical, and Chris RBL, they're surely going to have to come in soon. Maybe they're waiting for the softs. Or maybe they're waiting for a safety car, something like that. Because that would pretty much seal them a top 4 place if they're able to hold on to it against the quicker drivers behind. As Adis becomes the leader of this race ahead of Alpha Kevin. And he's up into first place. But surely pit lane beckons for these drivers. With Van der Geest, Manlike, and Nick bearing down on the Manlike, bearing down on even Max Van der Geest. And he takes P5. Nick not quite close enough to make that move and almost actually hitting the rear of Max Van der Geest as he struggled over the curb. Now then, Adis and Alpha Kevin are into the pits. And it's going to be the lead of the race inherited surely by Manlike, who comes around the final corner. No, it's not. I mean, Typical and the Chris RBL, they're going to go on another lap. But Manlike inherits this lead of the race with Max Van der Geest only just behind. And Adis and Kevin coming out behind Simbarox and Niall Gio. Gio, who is being held up by TTM Tree, he needs to make this move as soon as he possibly can. As soon as he possibly can. Because, well, I think P5 may be his peak today, or P4 may be his peak today. He will be seeing that podium streak come to an end at the hands of the fact that he couldn't get past TTM Tree. And then the gap is continuing to build. 2.4 seconds now between the Haas and TTM. Nick ahead. This is where teammates could come into play. Could Nick back off, allow Gio to get back into the DRS and then burst back up? Who knows? But all will become obvious. Manlike almost in the DRS of Chris RBL, just ahead of him. And so, the Mercedes, this could be his opportunity. Maybe not this lap, maybe next lap, although he's going to go past the detection point within the DRS range. So you never ever know. That means Max Van der Geest isn't going to have the same advantage down the straight, nor is Nick. And Niall Gio, in the meantime, finally making his way past Tree into P6, and he can try to gain on Nick, but 3.3 seconds is nothing, well, nothing to sniff at, and that will be a huge gap to bring down if he can. Manlike following Chris RBL, trying to get that slipstream as the Ferrari comes into the pits. Typical continues in the lead of the race, but Manlike taking the fastest lap for only just a moment, with Nick retaking it, and moving up into P4, what will be P3, the final podium spot. And I think Niall Gio is too far back now for Nick to try to help him. I think it's more worth it, Nick trying to get into the lead of the race and then maybe holding them up, or maybe just flying by himself on to take the victory. But it's never as easy as that. As I'm sure Nick's going to find out at some point this evening. Some point probably in 8 laps time. If he even helps his teammate at all. Which of course he isn't entitled to, but listen, now as part of the commentary team, I've got to back him. I've got to be biased. And that is my bias. With Nick just getting the good exit that he needed. Max Van der Geest getting the good exit that he needed, though, even better than the one that the McLaren got. And the move could be made here from the RB on the Mercedes. And provisional P1 goes to him. Manlike as well, being overtaken by Nick into P number 3. QTM 1-2 would be lovely. I mean, it's on the cards. Is it? Who's the second TTM driver that I'm thinking of? It would be wonderful, but as Typical finally comes into the pits. I mean, you've got a TF10 driver up there in the lead. You've got Nick in second, I believe. Is Man like TTM? Not 100% sure. I'm going to have to check the Twitter. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, Max van der Geest continuing to lead this race. These top three have been absolutely dominant so far this. Man like Nick, Niall. Ah, I mean, fair enough. I mean, TTM dominating tier 2 then at the moment. I know that Tree is, I know that Nick is. And I was pretty sure that Manlight was as well. I didn't know Niall was. But, hey, listen. I know him as a commentator, not as a driver. And I'm sure the top three would... I mean, the top three, they're 4.1 seconds ahead of Gio. So they pretty much know him as a commentator, not a driver. Because they will not be worried about him. They will just be worried about their own fight. And Gio will only be worried now about the Alpine behind him with 2 extra laps on those mediums to burn as he looks with that DRS as well down the back straight. Surely this move will be nothing short of simple. And indeed it is. Simbarox could be looking for that move as well. No, not to be. He shaped it up, but he didn't finish the circle. Good evening, YS Alter. Welcome to this action. We've got yellow flag. Lawrence retires from the session. Safety car! Safety car. Lap 18 of this race, and it is just spiced up. Those who have passed the pit, so that is everybody from TTM Tree up, will not be able to pit. At least on this lap, Nam is the leader of those who can, which is typical. Chris RBL, typical, who's only just come into the pits, by the way. So very, very unlucky from the RB. Or the Red Bull, sorry. Incredibly unlucky for him. One more lap and he could have pushed it. Then McTimmy, Minotaur, and then Dan, who will come into the pit. And his race will be lit up once again. Van der Geest down to Chris RBL will be kicking themselves at the fact that they were unable to come into the pits. And I'm sure we will see them all dive in after... Apologies. After this lap. I'm sure we'll see them dive in. It would make sense to see them dive in. But hey, I could be proven wrong. They could try and stick it out on those mediums. I mean, they've got a comfort. Those at the front, they've got a comfort blanket at least of the fact that they've got drivers behind them on the same, in the same situation as they are, and it's just about the gamble. It's all about gambling here in Vegas. We knew I'd get that in somehow. It's all about gambling here in Vegas. Is it going to be a gamble to stay on those mediums and allow, you know, the likes of Alpha Kevin, Simbarox, those who haven't quite been in the fight for the lead of this race, allow them to fight with these drivers? Do they think they can hold them off for 6 laps? Or do they just come in the safe option, come in for the softs, but find themselves down at the bottom and having to fight through the field? 2 different strategy options. They're the only 2 that everybody is going to take. Which one is it going to be? It's going to be to stay out, unless your name is Niall Gio or TTM Tree, who come into the pits. Gio actually picking up 10 seconds worth of a penalty. Very unfortunate for the McLaren. He's going to serve it now. Pick up a new front wing in the meantime. So he will drop to the rear of the field. And hopefully he will give us action in the final. Hopefully he's going to give us action in the final part of this race. Because finally he's released from that pit box. He might even actually be ahead of Dan, which would just rub it in the wounds. But hey, I mean... He is actually ahead of Dan. That's unfortunate for the RB. Means that Tree and Niall Gear have fresher tyres than anybody else on the field. It's only by a lap, but a lap on those tyres is huge. And, well, we will have to wait and see. We've got 5 laps left. Surely this lap is when we come into the pits. Or when the safety car comes into the pits and we go back to green flag racing. That comes down to whether Niall Gio and TTM or sorry, FRT Dan can catch up to the field. Sorry, there's too many TTM drivers on this field. But yeah, they will catch up nice and easy. And green flag is almost here. We haven't got an announcement yet. Generally, it comes at the end of this straight. And, well, Max van der Geest will lead us away. We'll see. Yeah, the safety car is going to come in this lap, and Max van der Geest will lead us away for this first lap in the green flag conditions. And the RB just biding his time. We've seen some ridiculous safety car restarts, going early, going late, going whenever they like. But Max van der Geest, for him, it's all about biding his time. And going now, putting the power down, and he will fly into turn number 1 in the lead of the race. Nick he'll stick pretty close, and there's battles behind us. That is Nam going to the inside, and maybe on quite a few drivers. Actually not making an overtake in the end. Kevin and Simbarox fighting. Kevin coming on top in that P5 spot. Nam, the leader of those soft compound tyres now. He went for a move into turn 1. He didn't follow through with it, and now he's going to look to the inside of Chris RBL, sending it down the inside into turn number 5. He could get Simbarox as well. This would be a huge move, but he's unable to pull it off completely. He gets past Chris RBL, though, and he's the first of those soft compound tyre runners to fight forward. Typical is the next around the outside of Chris RBL. It becomes the inside, and the Red Bull finds his way into P8. Nam further forward now as he gets past Simbarox. And those softs are coming alive here under the lights. It's typical making his way past Simbarox. Now, these two are really the ones making that progress so far, with McTimmy, the leader of the pack behind, really not getting any sort of momentum past Chris RBL, or at least yet. McTimmy and Minotaur, the next two drivers to stake their claim for those positions higher up, as Simbarox comes back at Typical, comes back at Nam. That straight line speed is absolutely unbelievable from the Aston Martin. And he moves back up into P6 as Tree gets past Minotaur for that P11. He's done waiting around. And P11 will be his P10 soon, most likely, as McTimmy just hasn't got that pace on those softs. Or Chris RBL hasn't got the pace on the mediums to compare with the softs, as Gio's to the inside of Minotaur into turn number 1. Minotaur sending it really, really deep. And Dan slotting his way through as well, sliding his way into P13. But the top 6 are still medium runners. Simbarox could do everybody else an incredible favour here by holding off Nam and Typical until at least their tyres fall off, as there's fighting. Internal fighting between the two soft runners. Tree and McTimmy fighting away, and Tree comes out on top into P number 10. And Typical and Nam side by side. It's internal fighting that could cost the soft runners a crack at the moves ahead, and indeed it is, as Nam and Typical still side by side. Simbarox now almost out of the DRS of everybody just ahead. They're still fighting. They've fought for an entire sector, and Typical just later on the brakes. He takes that P7. He'll be looking for that P6 as soon as he possibly can. That penalty will, well, it'll bear more weight than we thought it was going to earlier in this race. 3 seconds worth is going to be applied to his time at the end of the race. Nam is looking to pile on that misery for Typical in the meantime, as Niall Gio makes his way past McTimmy, but there's fighting for the lead of the race. TTM, Nick, and Addis, and Manlike all almost coming together. Addis and Manlike, I think, did come together, but the Alpine finds his way through, and now 2 Mercedes are going to be tacking the Alpine into turn 1. We've seen this before, and Manlike around the outside of Addis into turn number 1. He makes that move stick. Alpha Kevin trying to cling to the outside line. He's unable to, but the switchback is on for the Mercedes, and he's just unable to make that move, but he squeezes Addis, so he's not going to quite get the exit that he wants. Addis allows Alpha Kevin the space. Kevin gets the slipstream off of Manlike. He's going to have to be careful not to get boxed in, and indeed he does. Tree makes his way past Simbarox, but 2.5 seconds is too much to get over, as Dan sends it to the inside of Niall Gio, not making that move stick. And P10 remains Dan's. P9 remains Niles. but there's fighting for that P4 slot. Alpha Kevin with a 3-second time penalty as he tries to hold off a dis. He is successful in the end, but not without punishment. As Alpha Kevin, he holds on to that P4 slot. A dis still in P5, but the DRS is going to beckon for both those drivers, but the slipstream is going to beckon for just a dis as they head out now. Chris RBL picks up a 3-second time penalty. He joins the queue, and he joins 4 other drivers. But in terms of the battle, that matters. It's Alpha Kevin only and Chris RBL now who have those issues. But Van der Geest still leading the race. The gamble to stay on those mediums is going to work as we've only got 2 laps left of this race. But who is going to come out on top? Is it Van der Geest? Is it Nick? Is it Manlike? We will have to wait and see. Surely it's only those 3 in contention, especially as Adis has a poor chicane. And so he won't make his way forward. And he'll actually almost drop out of the DRS because of just 3 poor corners, 14, 15 and 16, which is going to cost him a hell of a lot of time. He's going to be out of the DRS even as they pass the detection point. Not quite, as he's 0.96 seconds behind. Chris RBL is, well, he's really struggling now. He's almost out of the DRS behind Adis in the meantime. But it's the top 4 who've broken free. But a 3-second time penalty for Alpha Kevin is going to cost his battle for the lead of the race. We've got just 2 laps left in said race. And Niall Gio makes his way past Simbarox. It's really not been Simbarox's day, and he drops back down into P number 10. And he's the only medium runner, actually, who's been overtaken after this safety car and has maintained that being overtaken. But we've seen his straight line speed, so I'm sure he's going to come back at Tree and Gio down the straight. But for the meantime, he sits in P9. Chris RBL holding off Tree and Gio, doing an incredible job to stop them, as Simbarox did a couple of laps ago. But the soft runners have now caught up. Everybody has DRS down this main straight. So it's going to be an absolute cesspool of slipstream and an absolute cesspool of straight line speed. Max van der Geest, though, does not have it. So he's going to get absolutely swarmed. Manlike takes the outside. Nick takes the inside line. Nick is going to look for the lead of the race. He's not going to find it as Van der Geest just set himself up for the corner exit. Perfect defending from the RB. And he still holds on. Nick, though, still holds on to the inside line, but Manlike is now the one on the outside, and he could make that move into P2 as we head on to the final lap of this Grand Prix. Van der Geest moves to cover off Nick, but he doesn't move to cover off Manlike, who looks around the outside of turn number 1. But Nick just holds on to that position, and he just holds on again ahead of Manlike, who, well, he almost made that switchback move work, and Nick with a poor exit. Manlike could pounce. Is he going to? Is he going to? No, Nick is going to look forward. Is he going to make this move? He's scaring Van der Geest. He's trying to force a mistake. There is a mistake, though, from Alpha Kevin as Adis looked for that move. But alas, it was not to be. The Alpine just sitting behind Niall Gio and Tree side by side in the meantime. This is the battle for P7 and the McLaren with the only one with real pace on these softs since the safety car came in. He's fought his way from, I believe, P12 it was, up to P8, almost P7 on Tree. But we'll switch back to the lead of the race. And the battle for that as DRS will be activated one more time. Van der Geest will be confident because he's held off Nick and Manlike before down this straight. He's held them off multiple times. He's going to have to hold them off one more time. But it may be one time too many as Nick bears down. I've mentioned his straight line speed. It is absolutely incredible. And it could bring him the race lead and the race victory today as he pulls to the outside line. The McLaren and the RB wheel to wheel as they head into turn number 12. And there's contact. Van der Geest tries to squeeze. There's chaos as Adis has issues and drops down. So does, I believe that was Alpha Kevin. Manlike pulls alongside Van der Geest. It's going to be the race victory going to the McLaren. Nick takes the lead, but where's the rest of the positions? It's a photo finish, in fact, ahead of Manlike and Van der Geest as well. Just under a second behind. Absolute carnage on that last lap of the console tier 2 race. But Nick comes out on top. I said that straight line speed could be the difference between a race victory and P2, P3. And it proved. It's the reverse of a commentator's curse. That rhymed. I'm a poet. I don't even know it. And I need to go to bed. But victory to the McLaren. To TTM Nick, who picks up his second victory in a row. Manlike just 24 hundredths behind in second. And in third, Max van der Geest, his streak of second places comes to an end, but his streak of podiums and his championship lead will continue into Great Britain next week. But what a race. What an incredible race we saw at the end, at the very end. And Chris RBL, other drivers just really having issues on the final couple of corners. There will need to be replays. Chris RBL and Dis were the main ones who suffered problems. And I believe they're about to start arguing in the Discord. But what an incredible race. It was cooking. It was cooking all throughout. And it just came out of the oven at that safety car restart. My voice is struggling. And I don't know about yours, screaming at your screens, whatever screen that you seem to be watching this on. What an incredible race that ended up being. And the standings are already getting updated. The provisional standings, at least, are already getting updated. Van der Geest, his lead at the top of the championship cuts down to just 5 points ahead of Manlike, with TTM Nick just 2 points behind him. Other than that, no real change as Nick just jumps up. Harvey didn't race that race, and Gio will jump him into P4. Well, he'll stay in P4, actually, after all that. But that was the race that we all came to see. We all come to see absolute chaos. And indeed, that's what we got. But from myself, from Kotkas, I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. It was an absolutely incredible finish. One of the best finishes I've seen so far this season. And there's still 6 rounds left to come. So subscribe. Tune in next time. We've got a console tier 1. You can switch over to that now if you so desire. That is on the same channel that we are on. Then we've got PC returning on Monday. Legacy on Tuesday. Before console returns on Thursday with tiers 3 down. And then us lot return. I say us lot. It may not be me commentating next week. It's been an absolute honour this week to join you and to bring you this tier 4, this tier 2 action. But until next time, it is goodbye.